Monarchs, welcome back. We are in the Lions Den with Coach Tennant McVea of Old Dominions Men's Soccer. How are we doing, Tennant?
Doing well, mate. Doing well. Just got in from practice today. Good session before we hit the road in the morning to head down to play against the University of Kentucky. So, good day and ready to be home, get some dinner, and play with the kids a little bit tonight.
Nice. So I think there's 2 games since we've last talked, Marshall and Georgia State.
Yep.
The Marshall effort, we outshot them. We had more opportunities on corner. We just couldn't put them on target. What was your general breakdown of what happened in this game against a very solid opponent?
Yeah, look, Marshall are one of the best teams in the country. They have been for several years. Chris has done a great job down there. Yeah, it was one of those ones where I was really disappointed for the players. They executed on the game plan. They got it right defensively. And to be fair, like you said, we created a lot of chances. We missed a penalty right before halftime, which would have taken us 1-0 up, which you can't do on the road. But after going 1-0 down in the second half, the guys really fought. We got one back, 1-1, and then we conceded off a corner really late. So, I told the guys after the game, I really felt for them because of the effort they put in, and to be fair, because of the performance that they put in. But at the end of the day, you can't miss a penalty on the road, and the goals that we conceded, I felt were soft. So lessons to be learned, but it went to show the players, and it gives the staff confidence in that we're moving in the right direction. We're doing the right things. We're competing with the best teams in the country, and that's where we want to be year in and year out. So we took some positives from it, and it's going to help us be better moving forward.
So after the game, you mentioned that this team has the talent to compete with anybody, and it showed that against West Virginia and Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
But you talked about the mentality. They need to have the right mentality to go out there and just take over and win these games. What's needed to kind of bridge that gap, do you think, mentally?
So I think that takes time to build. I think probably the wrong word for it, but really the only one I have right now is you have to create a type of ego going into these games where it's we are going to win, we are going to lose. That belief in ourselves that we are capable. And right now we're still teetering a little bit on that. I don't know whether fear creeps in or expectation, but we're just not consistent at those high levels. And even if you take those 2 games against West Virginia and Marshall, even though the performances were very high level, those moments, those lapses in concentration, those lapses in execution of what we're trying to do, they ultimately let you down. So soccer's a 90-minute game. How can we be consistently confident and believe in ourselves in order to make sure that tactically and technically we're getting it right all of the time? So that's what the best teams in the country do. And while we are doing that for long periods in games, it just hasn't quite been where it needs to be. So, we have been struggling with that as a staff. We've been talking about it a lot. All right, we're talented. All right, we know what we're doing on the field. But that last little hurdle, which I think is probably the biggest one, is how do we create the confidence and that ego in ourselves that we are a top team?
All right. And then you had a nice turnout against Georgia State, but the game ends up in a 0-0 tie. You seem pretty upset with this tie at the end of the match. What was the biggest driver for you to make you so upset?
Well, I sort of looked at it, and when you get the performances that we did and no results against West Virginia and Marshall, and those are 2 really big teams, and taking nothing away from Georgia State at all, because Brett has done a fantastic job with that program, but they haven't been as good this year. And it's a game where you're going in, you're at home. There's an expectation that on paper, you're probably a better side this year. The mentality going into the West Virginia game and into the Marshall game, and the level of concentration that you bring to that and execution is high level, and you're locked in and you're ready to work really hard and you're ready to go that extra mile in order to get the job done. And we didn't have that against Georgia State. That was the disappointment that I had with the group, and we've talked about that at length. At the end of the day, we still dominated, a lot of the game. We had most of the ball, but we had no bite. We allowed them, to create some chances, and we weren't brave enough in the final third. We weren't willing enough to run behind them. Things that we had been doing really well in the 2 weeks before that. So the level of the performance wasn't where it needed to be to justify us winning the game. Even though we nearly did very, very late. But again, that this goes into these long term bouts of consistency that mean that you're a great team and not just a good team. And that's something we've talked about this week: good versus great. How do you get to that point? What is it that makes a great team? And showing up against a team that hasn't been as in the standings as high, or that you feel that you're more levelly pegged with, and you play down. That was the frustration, and the players were frustrated with themselves after the game. And to be fair to them, they've really bounced back this week in terms of our training, our attitude, and everything like that that needs to go into it. Because not picking up 3 points at home, it's it sets you back. Not sets you back, but it makes things a little bit more difficult. So now we've got to go on the road against a few really good teams, and we got to pick things up. So yeah, I just think there was that you could feel it after the game. It was 2 points dropped, but the players understand that, and I think we're vocalizing it, we're talking about it, and we're making steps, moving forward to see if we can stop things like it happening again.
So I do want to highlight Key White because he did have the goal against Marshall, and he
Mhm.
seems to be coming a consistent scorer for you or threat on the offensive end. Talk to us about how Key has impacted the team since arriving.
Yeah, Key's a local boy, from Norfolk. Grew up around here, played his soccer originally at Beach FC when he was younger, and then moved up to Richmond United to play ECNL. So I've known Key for a very, very long time. He made the decision to go down to UNC, and play down there, for a few years, and did his undergraduate down there, and then had the opportunity to bring him home for his graduate work, which we were really fortunate to do. And Key's a great kid. I've grown to love him even more as a young man, in these last couple of years that he's been with us. He's an exceptional person. He works hard. We named him captain this year. His attitude since arriving back here has been fantastic. And Key possesses a lot of extremely uh, difficult physical attributes. Yeah, he can run like the wind, and he's tough, and he's not going to back out of things. He can do some things that others can't. We've been working really hard for him to be more consistent in front of goal, more consistent with his final delivery, and he's approached all of those things, with the right attitude. But most of all, what people don't realize about Key is, you know, he's one of those fast twitch guys that they can run out of steam if he's going at a high pace all the time. It's just the way that he's made. But defensively, he works really hard, and he's tough in the tackle. He's hard to get by. And I think that there's something that he's good at that people maybe don't realize as much. So, look, just a tremendous, tremendous person, tremendous football player, and we're really lucky to have him. I'm glad that he's finding, the joy and the success that he hasn't had in previous years. Even when he was playing at UNC, these are his biggest numbers that he's putting up right now, and that's really nice to see. And I'm really proud of him, and I'm really proud of how he's, um, positioned himself to lead with us this year.
And before we move on to the upcoming games, I would like to put a highlight on how many cards were pulled in the Georgia State game. We had what, 8 yellow and 2 red. That seems like a lot. Am I off base there?
No, you're not. And I'm hoping, this is sometimes you get scolded for, talking about some of these issues, in your interviews and things like that. I'm at a loss this year, in terms of, especially the officiating here at home. It's just disappointing. I think, the incident that happened, with the 2 red cards on Saturday was handled on both sides, not just on our side, but on their side as well, was handled atrociously. It's a nothing incident. Now where 2 players are going to be suspended for a game on both sides, and there is no need for it. So just really disappointed. I think that we're asking a lot of these referees with the video replay. We're slowing the game down to look at some of these decisions that you can barely see. And to be fair, I think it's affected the level. I've made a conscious effort this year to try to sit on my hands and not get involved. But at the end of the day, people are getting paid. There's a job to do. I just feel like there's no standard for them, and there's no outlet for us then to be able to voice our concerns. You get turned away. So just a little bit disappointing from that perspective. I think the players, and I'm not just talking about our players. I'm talking about within the league, within the country. There has to be standards and repercussions for when things go that badly wrong. No one's out there trying to injure people, and at the end of the day, it just becomes a little bit frustrating, especially when you're playing at home and you feel like there's something that just doesn't add up.
Thank you for talking about that, because it just, I don't know, it's a lot. I mean, that was,
Yeah, like the people that are coming to watch the games are talking about it too. Yeah, that's the
yeah.
bottom line. It's not like I'm sitting here. There's been games where we've won. There's been games where we've lost. There's been games where it's not like it's a singular this incident or that incident. I think it's just across the board. I've talked to my peers about it, and I think they have the similar sentiment. We're focusing on the wrong things. This year our staff have had 2 bookings because people have been outside of our coaching area. One for warming up players, and the other one because my assistant is standing a yard outside the box and talking onto the field to our players. Those are the frustrating things. It's like we're being nitpicky about things that don't really matter, and then we don't get it right on the field. And again, these guys, they come out, they're taking their own time, but people are getting paid. And at the end of the day, there's a job to do. There has to be a standard.
That's crazy, because if you watch a regular college football game or college basketball game, those guys are going way onto the field at points. They shouldn't be, but that's
Yeah.
beside the point. We can move on. All right. The next 2 Fridays, you have 2 road games. The first is at Kentucky and Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
First, talk to us about what it's like playing at a venue like that in the SEC. Well, Sun Belt,
Yeah.
but an SEC
Yeah, no,
program.
it's a different, and that there's, for people that don't know, within the Sun Belt men's soccer, what makes it such a special league is that those big time conferences, the Par Five, groups that uh, they don't have men's soccer leagues. Those schools that do have men's soccer, they play in the Sun Belt. So not only the SEC teams in Kentucky and South Carolina, but obviously UCF and West Virginia. I think it's easy to what the gap is. The gap is that these guys have fantastic facilities. They've got money. They've got everything going for them. Like the American football teams are propped up, and it's just the business of what we do. And Kentucky have been a great program. And Johan's done a fantastic job there, and has earned everything that they've got. But the stadium's fantastic. It's a great field. It's a good trip, because it's not like you're going to a bad place to play. It's a great field. It's a great stadium. The setup's nice. We'll be able to go down there and train tomorrow night, and you'll be accommodated. So it's just, there's a big gap in terms of what is provided, to these teams, and
Yeah.
whether it be scholarship, whether it be the incidental things. They've got Austin money. They've just got the ability to do a lot more than we do. But at the end of the day, we're still competing. And our goal is to beat these types of teams, no matter what that gap may be. And there's no excuses. It's, can we go out, match them up? It's a 11v11. It's a game of football, and we're going to give it everything that we've got. And you give them the respect that they're due, but we're going to back ourselves against any team in the country, like we've shown so far this season.
And then let's talk about their style of play. What are going to be our opportunities to leave Lexington with a win? What should we be doing?
So Kentucky's an interesting matchup, because their MO has always been, they're very difficult to beat. They're very difficult to beat. And they're fit, they're strong, they're going to be organized. You have to work really, really hard to break them down. And, I think for us is, defensively, how can we stop them getting the ball into higher areas and then their energy to run by us in the middle of the park and pick up the ball in the second phase and outwork you that way with the ball. How can we match that? How can we stop them doing that? So we've talked about that in the last couple of days, and the boys have really bought into the defensive work that we have to do. And then with the ball, how can we move them in that lower block that they're going to play in, that organized system? How can we move them and create gaps in between their lines in order for us to penetrate, in the areas? So, it's going to be interesting both sides of the ball. They did play last night. They played up in Indiana last night in a really tough game. They were 2-0 up at halftime and ended up losing 3-2. Indiana put the screw on them in the second half. It was one of the best 45 minutes of soccer, college soccer, that I've seen from that Indiana team last night. They worked so very hard. So, they're coming off a tough game. We haven't had a midweek, so we have to find and out energy them. We have to come out with the right attitude and mix it up a little bit like Indiana did in the second half last night. But yeah, it's going to be a tactical battle. It's going to be a physical battle. And Johan always sets up his teams to be really difficult to play against. And it's a great place to go and play, but you've got to work really hard to pick up points.
All right, and the following Friday, you'll be in Orlando facing off UCF of the Big 12. Talk to us a little bit about their stadium set. Like, is it another great fan base that comes out and supports them?
Yeah, well, I think UCF's a little bit different, very different style, down there. To be honest, I haven't played at UCF yet. So I couldn't talk to you about the facilities. I know it's a nice field and all those types of things, but this will be my first time, and our staff's first time to this facility. Obviously, they joined the league last year and they come to us. So, that'll be an interesting, we got to go there for the first time and kind of figure it out a little bit. What's the setup like? Is it easy to travel around? We're staying pretty close to the campus, so it should be easy enough that way. Another, staff that I have a lot of respect for and, are easy to work with, as we go down there, and a very different contrasting style to perhaps the Kentucky side, a Florida team that have a bunch of sort of flary international guys at times. They've got a couple of Brazilian players. They have that kind of Hispanic feel where, they're going to manipulate the ball. They're going to try and move you with the ball. So yeah, very contrasting styles. A top tier program. And that's going to be a difficult task as well.
Sorry, I'm looking at their schedule. So they face Marshall this weekend on Sunday.
Yep.
And then they
Hopefully,
host you. So
depending on the weather.
right. Obviously, Orlando could get hit hard this week. So
Yep.
I think we have to talk about a fun question before we let you go, because we've talked about soccer. We've talked about the mentality that we need moving forward to believe.
Hit me with it.
All right. So fun question. I love music. I was looking at my schedule for the next month. I'm going to at least 6 different concerts in the next month, and I'm very excited about all of them. So what's your favorite genre of music? And then when you're working out, what are you listening to?
Great question. I'm a big music guy. I think one of my friend's pet peeves is I always play the game if a song comes on and we're out, and I'll ask who sings it, because typically I know, that's my mother's influence on me. She was sort of big into 80s pop, 80s rock, things like that. So my favorite genre, and I'm pretty easy listening with everything, but I can go two ways. I grew up in an era of dance music and clubbing and things like that. So if I'm in the car, I'll probably have a little bit of that on. If I'm feeling a little bit more, into myself, my feelings a little bit, it'll be a little bit of indie rock, specifically Britpop, bands like Oasis, Blur, the Cooks, a little bit, more later stuff, but good bands that way. So that would be the two that I would lean towards. But I've also been known to rock out to a little bit of Busted, or it's a British band that you guys probably don't know. Scouting for Girls, things. Those kind of British indie bands that are a little bit kind of softer and good lyrics and things like that. And the occasional boy band, Westlife, take that. The British classics, not the Backstreet Boys.
Hey, that's
And
fair.
then you asked about the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gym, I get a little bit eclectic. If I'm on the treadmill and I'm running, it'll be dance music. But if I'm lifting weights, I wouldn't shy away from a little bit of heavy metal just to get me going.
Well, you're singing my tune there. That's what I lift to as well.
Yeah.
Angry
Well,
music.
I always go back. We had when I was playing college ball up at Loyola, we had a strength and conditioning coach called Jay Dyer, who was big in the world of lacrosse. Jay was an extremely well accomplished strength and conditioning guy, a bit of a guru that way. And it was always rock music when we were in the gym. It wasn't allowed to be anything else. And I don't know, you have to check it, but he always said that rock music was scientifically proven to make you lift heavier. I don't know if that's true, but that was always his excuse for me forcing us to listen to it. And now I've just kind of conditioned to it.
Well, I believe it. It kind of shuts your brain off, so you're not thinking as much, and that doubt in the back of your head is whether I can lift this is not really there because you're just like in the zone.
Yeah. Do you have to wait for the chorus to kick in, or?
Well, for me, it's more that solo, that drum solo or that guitar solo kicks in, and you're ready to go. All right, and then I guess a tangential question to that related to soccer. These young kids, obviously, we're becoming the older folks now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are they playing in the locker room? Is it a lot of hip hop or rock or?
Yeah, we have an eclectic group. You've got some Europeans, you've got some Americans, you've got like a little bit of a different thing. We try not to influence a lot, although I do complain a lot of the time about some of the hip hop that does come on. And I don't want to sound too old. Some of the hip hop these days is terrible. Whereas we had when I was in college, if you go back into the mid 2000s, early 2010s, there was some great hip hop music. And occasionally they'll throw some of that on that I can tolerate, but some of the new stuff is terrible. And then getting up for a game, a little bit of dancers. You've got that British kind of flair in there that, the club hits will be playing on. And so they're pretty good with that way. I do have a few, if you catch them, at the right time of the day, if they're in early or something, a lot of the lads will put on a bit of country. So we got there's that sort of southern, we got some boys that like the country music as well. So that'll be blasting from time to time, which I don't mind. That would be my easy listening. I can listen to the country music as well.
I can imagine that throws off the European players a little bit.
Yeah, I think when you first come, I remember being in locker rooms when I first came here and listening to the country music and being like, nope, not happening. And then when you kind of ingrain yourself in the culture here a little bit, I really enjoy country music. That's the concerts. If you go to a concert now, you're probably going to one here to see somebody playing that's big and it's easily accessible. So I think it grows on you. It grew on me, so I think it's growing on them. And if you ask Michael Statham, our big English goalkeeper, who is from Stockport in England, what his favorite music is, hands down will be country music. He is the most redneck Mancunian that you've ever met in your whole life. He even comes in with the camo gear on.
All right, good for him, man.
He's down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, good for him. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be rooting you on when you're on the road. I can't wait for you guys to be back in Norfolk for a game. But thanks again for your time, and go Monarchs.
No problem. Thanks, guys.